49ers Web Zone No Huddle podcast, part of the Odyssey family. I'm Al Sacco with Brian Renick. And to kick off our show, we're joined by NFL Network's analytics expert. You can see her every Sunday on NFL Network's NFL Game Day morning at 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern. She is Cynthia Frelund. Cynthia, thanks for coming back on the show this season. Really appreciate it.
So great to see you guys. I'm sorry I'm coming from the car. I told you, whenever it rains in Los Angeles, people do not know how to drive. And so I just pulled over here so I wasn't late for you guys. But my goodness, it's just hilarious.
We appreciate the time. Can't wait to talk some Niners with you. But before we do, I had some NFL questions for you, just some overarching stuff about the league. And this season, I saw a stat. Scoring is down again in the league. And I saw that there are currently 12 teams with more field goals than touchdowns. In 2011 is the only season since in the 2000s where there were more than 6. I'm curious what you see or what your numbers have told you about why scoring is down. Is it because there's been 10 rookie quarterbacks to start? Is there more to it? What are you seeing around the league with that?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. First, there's always a natural ebb and flow between offenses and defenses. So the offense has had an advantage for a couple of years, and especially during those COVID years when you had a lot more remote meetings and stuff, and people were, it's much harder to react to something than it is to be the one who designs the play. But defensive coordinators are really smart too, and they figure things out as well. So we do see the pendulum switch. Just, if you dial back and look at like the macro trends in the NFL, that ends up happening all of the time. But it's a little bit more pronounced this time. I think a couple of reasons. First, there are a lot of, I don't want to say like younger, but less experienced play callers in the NFL, not 49ers, but in other teams, the people who are calling the offenses are not people with Andy Reid like experience, right? So you have less experienced play callers, you have less experienced quarterbacks, and more less experienced quarterbacks. My English is terrible. More or less experienced quarterbacks. And ultimately what happens is they have a lot of college style, habits, right? And those college style habits are things that now defenses are like, oh, well, if we just play like a 2 safety shell, we're going to get an advantage because who doesn't play zone defense? College. So you have some people who are just getting a little bit of a jump defensive wise, again, assuming they have the personnel, because there's some trends that you kind of can't tell someone to change who they are, right? You can't be like, hey, you've never executed this against zone coverage, but you're going to be fine, right? Like we pull out these like exceptional safeties and these, NFL, like, all pro corners, you're going to be totally cool, right?
So you were on the show almost a year ago to the day from now, and the Niners were 4-4 at the time. And the year before, after 8 games, they were 3-5. And we had you on, and I'm like, Cynthia, why are they so inconsistent? Like, we're worried this season, and you were like, Al, relax, they're going to be fine. And sure enough, they don't lose again until the NFC Championship game. So this year, they start 5-0. They go into that slump. But then last week, they look great. I mean, they looked like the Niners again. But the schedule is a little tougher this time around in the second half. They have Seattle twice. They have to go to Philly. They have to play Baltimore. Do you see another big second half from them? What is your model, or again, just whatever you see of the team predict for the Niners over the last 9 games? So.
Well, I think good things for the Niners. I mean, I definitely think this is a situation where you're going to have another season of a very long season, a good long season, a nice one. A few things. Number one, obviously you notice the trend differences when Trent Williams is playing. Listen, as it turns out, when you have like the best left tackle playing, things look better for your quarterback. Newsflash. And Deebo Samuel also, that's a really big help for Brock Purdy as he evolves into the NFL. He had the luxury of being able to be on this, like, I mean, not to say I could play quarterback in this system because I couldn't, but, I feel like it is a much easier path when you have all of these amazing weapons than it is for someone who's, say, working with, I kind of feel bad for Tommy DeVito. Like, this is not a great big one, but like that, other than that, like, that's not I think everyone sort of feels bad for him. So long story short, you have to factor those things in. And as long as this team can stay healthy, then I think, or not too unhealthy, if that makes sense, then I think that it's just the sky's the limit, especially like, I don't know how it was allowed to add Chase Young. Like, I just feel like the other teams should be like, what are you doing? Why are you making it so hard on us? So
you got to veto that, right?
Yeah, like I would think they'd be like, "Excuse me, I'm Jerry Jones over here. That is not allowed." I'm just, obviously I'm teasing, but with that front, and then Fred Ward is just playing lights out this year. I think
Yeah.
obviously you guys talk about him a lot, and nationally when you're on a national game, people are like, "Look for number 54," but I don't think people understand that role this year with the way that the defenses are playing. The teams, look at the good teams. The teams that have that kind of linebacker are good. Baltimore with Roquan Smith. You've got even Demario, even Demario Davis for the Saints. That's something where you can have an opportunity to have just a better. I'm not suggesting that the Saints are anywhere near the same quality as the Ravens or even the Niners, but you have a much better opportunity to win when you have a guy like that. That is so key in this particular season, especially with the trends we're seeing with quarterbacks and offenses playing, and scoring being down.
Yeah, you would have thought after last season the league would have learned their lesson when they allowed Kyle Shanahan to get Christian McCaffrey, and here we go to now it's Chase Young and
it seems like it's like I read that, I go, this can't be right. Why would what is Washington doing? Like, at least give it to someone in the AFC. Washington, what are you thinking? It's not a good.
And then I think as a fan, sometimes you go, "Oh man, why are they willing to give him to us?" But I mean, he already, I feel like, showed out against Jacksonville, and
I'll tell you why
I
they're
think
willing
it's
to give
gonna
him. Because they don't want to pay him. They've got all of those people that they got rid of, the two guys that they had to pay this offseason. That is a wholesale. We are, new ownership. We're switching everything. We want to not have. I mean, you can't not pay him, right? So it's and they should, and I don't know why they didn't get that 5th-year deal. Whatever. That's Washington's problem, not the Niners' problem. You guys will have to figure out how to pay him later, but this year will be fine.
Yeah. I suggested that Martin Mayhew was wearing his old 49ers polo under his Commanders polo when he made that trade, because it just feels like that was the ultimate hookup from one buddy to another. Like, hey, here's Chase Young for a compensatory 3rd-round pick. But it actually kind of getting Chase Young really leads me into a question I had for you, and it's more analytics based than anything, but I feel like over the course of the last, let's say 5 years or so, the analytics community has really kind of touted coverage over pass rush in terms of where do you want to build your defense? Do you want to build it from the back to the front or the front to the back? And the 49ers have obviously largely ignored that idea and have sunk so much money into that front seven, or even more specifically the pass rush, almost sometimes to the detriment of coverage, or at least the coverage players that they have. But you've also seen that they've been a largely top 5 defense since doing that as well. Do you feel like the 49ers are just bucking a trend, and that they are, I guess you would say they are the exception to the rule? Or do you feel like sometimes when it comes to that idea, sometimes there are just times where it doesn't necessarily work out like the model would tell you it would?
So the answer that I have for you is, it's funny when we talk about things theoretically, it's nice, but the problem is you can't construct these. It's very hard to even find what's an average player, right? So when you're trying to construct a model, and even when they say on TV, like the analytics say to go for it, that's actually not true, because they don't factor in, like, if I have Justin Tucker and it's, who's to me, like, obviously, the best field goal kicker there is, that's going to make a different calculation and calculus for me, even for the subsequent drives on how far of a field goal I need to kick, right? So you have to know thyself. If you already have some absolute studs up front, and the amount of money that is free in the marketplace for you to acquire another one, meaning Chase Young being basically free, that's actually not that's not to the detriment of your defense. It's actually to the benefit of it. Your strategy needs to be cohesive. You can't be like, okay, this one over here, this one over, because if they think about it, I mean, Christian McCaffrey bucks that trend too, because analytics people don't like running backs, right?
Don't pay them, yeah.
Right. I don't think you should pay people who aren't playing, or, there's a lot of arguments to say not to overpay any player, but the market dictates the price, not necessarily the players, but the market doesn't dictate what's available there. You can't You can't get every player. It's not like you can say, I'm going to pick this corner, but of all the corners there, I'm going to choose one that's not as good because I only believe it up front, right? Like that's not how that works. It's just you got to look and see like what's actually coming out from the draft, what's actually coming out in free agency, what is achievable for me to get based on the people I already have. 53 players or even more, obviously with practice squad, you already have like surplus somewhere and you have a need elsewhere. So you got to be careful that you're not overly switching your strategy midstream. You can't fall in love with like some flashy player if it doesn't fit your system, right? So it's a fun theoretical talk, and I get dinged by the analytics people who I'm like, that's not what the analytics says here. That's what those models are based on. The models, especially when they talk about it like on TV, right? Like if you say, I would argue the model is trying to identify what is paid. Like let's pretend like we know someone's overpaid, we know someone's underpaid. Well, you can't know if it's over or under unless you know what paid is. So the models are like a historical reference point. They're not necessarily indicative of the future performance because your team doesn't have the same missing pieces or strengths as another team. So you have to know yourself relative to the numbers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Cynthia, before we get you out of here, obviously this is a 49ers podcast, so it's obligatory to talk about Brock Purdy because I mean that's just who the lightning rod for the 49ers, if you will. And so you look at numbers all the time, obviously, as the analytics expert over there at NFL Network, and we try and do the same. And Brock Purdy's currently leading the NFL in both passer rating and after Josh Allen's performance on Monday, QBR as well. And he's doing so at 23 years old. Tua and Foles did it in their age 24 seasons. Purdy will turn 24 in December. But most of the season he's going to be 23. And then you have to go all the way back to Dan Marino in 1984 to find a younger quarterback to do it. And that was 22. He's also the second quarterback, Kurt Warner being the other, to have three touchdown games with a rating of over 140. And he's obviously had his highs, and this season he's had his lows, that 3-game losing streak being kind of the one we look at there. But do you feel like we just have to say at this point it's 17 games of history now in terms of games that he started? Has he cemented himself as the long-term quarterback in this league and specifically for the 49ers, or do you think there's still a little bit out there that we need to find out before we can kind of crown him that?
That's a great question because we all want to know what the end result is going to be. But I would say it kind of comes back to two things. The first, I believe every quarterback, including Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Tom Brady, every single one is a system quarterback. Yes. And if you put someone with the right pieces in the right situation, they're going to have a much better outcome. You can't plop Brock Purdy onto the Giants and expect him to go bring you to an NFC championship game. That's not how this works, right? So I would say that as long as the system can keep providing for the things that nurture his strengths, and also, by the way, I also love that the next gen stats showed that he leads the league in deep passer rating. So 20 plus air yard passes. Like that's a wild stat because you'd think having kind of Christian McCaffrey who catches passes and Deebo Samuel who catch and run, like I think I close my eyes, I think Niners, I think catch and run. And then he also has the best, like it's kind of amazing, right? Like, so I would say as long as the system can keep nurturing him, and by the way, at least until the end of 4 years or whatever, when you're going to have to re-sign him, then it probably can. So I think he has a chance to really like learn the fundamentals and now not just win with him, win because of him. Right now, I would say they win with him. And it's not because I don't like him. It's because I think that I would like to see more of a sample size, right? You have to see, like, I don't think 17 games is enough for anyone, even Josh Allen, even Patrick Mahomes, even Tom Brady. So, what I'm saying is, I'm saying right now they win with him. And then I do believe he can develop into someone who can be the reason that they win. So awesome. So that's not maybe like the most satisfying answer, but that's where I stand.
And I think that's where, and I agree with you. I think that's where everybody needs to be. We just want our take to be right. And that's where everyone has a take and they find whatever complements their take, and it's confirmation bias and all of that. But the reality, like you said, is it's 17 games, and that's not enough to crown anybody. But they have been some really promising 17 games. That's
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's what he has proven is that our initial assessment of him, and given that he was the last pick in the draft, was not right. Most of us got it wrong. Like even the Niners got it wrong. Not to say, that because if 32 teams would have known he was capable of what he's capable of doing, then he wouldn't have lasted that long. So I can say we were all initially wrong. That's something I'm willing to say too.
Totally.
Yeah, it's just the rational way to look at it, and that's what you have to do with him. So, Cynthia, you are the best. We really appreciate it.
Oh God, you guys are the greatest. It's so great to be on with you. Hey, you know what's really great? My my local Starbucks barista, he is the biggest 49ers fan. He listens to us all the time. And I told him that I was coming on, and he is stoked. So
he listens. He listens to us. He's an Al Sacco fan, huh?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah,
that's cool to hear.
He goes, I need to know when it's going to air. I'm like, absolutely, I will let you know. So but he's the biggest 49ers fan, like very awesome. Cool stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. Happy Thanksgiving, Cynthia.
Yeah,
thank you again so much.
Yeah, thanks so much Cynthia. For having me. Bye, guys.
Bye.
That's cool. We got some fans out there, Brian.
Let's go. LA fans. Here we go.
I did not have on the bingo card today that Cynthia Frelund was going to go get a coffee and talk about our show with 49ers fan. That's pretty cool.
Neither did I, but here we are. Look at us. The Paul Rudd meme.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Look at us. Not me.
Not me. Definitely not. All right, Brian. So we got this game to go over. Before we do, I did want to give a shout out to Nick Bosa, who won Defensive Player of the Week for the 5th time. And I don't know if you saw this, but you know who is the only other 49er to win it 5 times?
I'm going to go. How long have they been doing it?
Oh God. Well, this had to be going back into the 90s.
Is it Bryant Young?
No, you'll not. If you didn't see it, it's so obscure. Well, it's not obscure, but you would just never think in a million years. Secondary, mid-90s.
Oh, Merton Hanks?
Yeah. Merton Hanks 5 freaking times. That's what NFL communication said. Yeah. So I'm going to have to go back and look at that. He would have been the last player that I thought, or one of them. I would have never guessed him. No. But yeah, Bosa had 3 tackles, a sack and a half, a pass defended, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. He's the 4th player to do that, 4th 49ers player to do that in a game since 2000. So
he wrecked shop.
Listen, Baldy was like, Bosa's not playing elite, and we were like, when are we going to see the real Nick Bosa? And he comes out and he wins Defensive Player of the Week. So good for him.
Yep. I love it. And honestly, that whole defensive line with the amount of pressure they put on Trevor Lawrence, Hargrave included, Young included, right? Even Cleveland Farrell got a sack against Trevor Lawrence. So that whole defensive line was just feasting, and now they get to face Baker Mayfield. I'm pretty excited.
So the Niners are facing the Bucs this week. This will be the 27th matchup overall between the two teams, and the 26th in the regular season. The Niners lead 19-6 as far as all-time record, and the Bucs won their only playoff game back in 2003, which was the game after the Niners had that huge comeback against the Giants. They played the would-be Super Bowl champion Bucs and just got annihilated in that game.
Yeah.
Which was Steve Mariucci's last game coaching the 49ers, because they went on to go with Dennis Erickson. I remember when they fired Mooch, I'm like, all right, they're going to bring in like a Niners guy. I thought they were going to hire Denny Green, I remember at the time. And then it was Dennis Erickson, and that was the first of, I guess, a lot of what the hell is going on.
Follies.
Moves started the dark ages until Harbaugh came back, and then there were a few more dark years. But that was the only playoff game with them. And the last time these teams met, everybody should remember this. It was last year. It was Brock Purdy in the game where we said, okay, he played so well against the Dolphins, but how's he going to come back? And he was just phenomenal. Just lit up Tampa Bay in the first half. The Niners won 35-7. And that game, to me, the Bucs Niners last year, I've said it on the show before, if you listen to the show, there was a lot of just, I don't know, anger and going back and forth amongst the fan base with Trey Lance versus Jimmy Garoppolo. And it was just kind of, I don't know, it got a little ugly, and Purdy came in there, and it was kind of like everybody was just united and like, holy shit, this is awesome. And it's kind of been that way. Well, this offseason was a little weird, but ever since then, mostly in the regular
Yeah.
season games, everybody's been really united, I think, with Purdy looks great. And that was the first game that it started. And it was nice to kind of have the fan base united behind somebody behind center.
What's what's wild is I don't know what the date of that Tampa Bay game was, but if I'm not mistaken, they played the Dolphins in week 9 and then they played the Bucks in week 10, I believe. I could be off there. But what I was going to say, what's wild is last year they played a team from Miami and then they played Tampa Bay at home and then they went to Seattle on a Thursday night. And this year they played a team from Florida and then they play Tampa Bay at home and then they play Seattle on Thursday. It's the exact script from last year, except it's the Jaguars instead of the Dolphins. So it's like, oh, interesting. But yeah, this Bucks team, I mean, it's plucky. They're probably better than people thought they would be. Baker Mayfield has played better than I think people thought, but they're still not good. They're alive in the NFC South because the NFC South sucks, and it's the Bucks and the Falcons and the Saints and the Panthers. So, I think one of the things that when you look at a game, right, especially with this 49ers team, I think going into a game against the San Francisco 49ers, you have to be great at something if you want a chance to win. And with the Browns, they are great on defense. With the Vikings, they played Kirk Cousins played great, and he has that in him. And then the Bengals, Joe Burrow is great. There isn't really anything great about this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, either on the defensive side or the offensive side of the ball. You've got Mike Evans, but his career is winding down. You've got Tristan Wirfs, but again, most of that line isn't very good. Baker Mayfield is, to me, average at best. I mean, I think he's a starter in this league, but he's not a superstar by any means. No. And on the defensive side of the ball, you've got Todd Bowles, who's a decent coordinator, and the Bucks are second in the league in blitz rate, which will be interesting to see because Brock Purdy absolutely obliterated the blitz against the Jaguars last Sunday and also against the Giants when they played the Giants in week 3 or week 2, whenever that was. But there's really nothing that this team does great. And I think if you don't do something great, it's going to be pretty difficult for them to pull off an upset. There's a part of me that feels like maybe this is a bit of a trap game just because the
schedule gets
after
this. Yep.
Yeah. Not only that, but they're also coming back from the East Coast, which isn't easy, but I think they'll be okay because it was coming off a bye. But and then you've got Seattle on Thursday, and honestly, the 49ers sights should be set right now on the division and the division only, based on those 3 losses that they had. So, it goes Seattle, Philly, Seattle after this game. And, you don't want to get caught looking ahead. Does this feel a little bit like that Falcons game from 2019? Maybe. But again, Matt Ryan was good still. So I just don't think that the Bucks have the horses to pull off an upset.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking up and down on the team, and Baker's got good numbers this year. So in 9 games, he's thrown for a little over 2,100 yards, and he's only got 5 interceptions this season. So he's done pretty well there. He's thrown a decent amount of touchdowns too. Now, one of the reasons for that is this team has only given up 16 sacks, which is 4th fewest in the NFL. And they have a sack percentage of 5%, which is 5th best. So they are giving Baker some time there. I went back and looked at Baker against the Niners, though, because he's played against them twice. I didn't miss a game. I think it was just twice. The rivalry with Bosa, right? That whole thing. And in 2019 with Cleveland, the Niners came out on a Monday night and just
kicked their ass.
Absolutely kicked their ass. Yeah, 31-3. Baker was 8 of 20 for 100 yards, 2 picks, 4 sacks, and a lost fumble in that game. And Bosa had 2 sacks, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, 5 QB hits, and 2 tackles for loss in that Monday night game. Bosa just absolutely destroyed Baker. Now, they played him when he was with Carolina, too. Niners 37-15, waxed them. Baker in that game, 20 of 36 for 215, a pick, and 4 sacks. Bosa was quiet, though. He only had 1 tackle in that game. But that'll be something to look for, the Bosa-Baker thing. But, yeah, you mentioned they don't do anything fantastic. Offensively, they're awful running the ball. atrocious.
Yeah.
3.1 yards per carry, which is last in the league. They have 230 carries and 703 rushing yards, so only 78 yards per game. Because they're so bad running the ball, they're 24th in total yards. They're 21st in yards per play. They don't score a ton. So they're one of 12 teams in the NFL right now averaging under 20 points a game at 19.8. There's talent there. Like, where would I worry on offense? You mentioned Mike Evans. He worries me. Ambry Thomas played a good game, but if they can protect the way that the numbers say that they do, Mike Evans can maybe get some big plays downfield. He's got 6 TDs and 737 yards this year. Godwin's a good possession receiver, 44 catches, and they have a young tight end, K-Dot, who can catch the ball. And they throw to Rachaad White a lot out of the backfield, but not a dynamic offense. The only thing that would really worry me offensively with them is Evans.
Do you have their schedule up right now?
I don't, but I can get it up.
I'm just wondering, again, talking about the number of sacks that they've allowed, just wondering who
they played.
Yeah.
Well, let's see here in the Bucs schedule. I know their wins aren't super impressive. So they have played. Let's see. Going back to what is week 1? They played the Vikings.
Okay.
They played, and I'm going to get into some stats too about home and away and what they allow to quarterbacks too in a minute with the defense. But they played the Vikings, the Bears, the Eagles, the Saints, the Lions, the Bills, the Falcons, the Texans, the Titans. So they've played some decent defenses.
They played some decent defenses, yeah. So
yeah,
I would say
with
that is a legitimate stat.
Yeah, that's something to watch. But okay, so defensively, they're 7th in total defense with 173 points allowed, right? So you would think, okay, well, that's pretty good, right? But when you look at it more, you could really move the ball on this team. They're 15th in total yards, 26th in yards per play. They've allowed the 4th most passing yards against with over 2,400. Wow. They give up a shitload of yak yards. So they're 5th most at 1,258 and 2nd most of any team that's only played 9 games.
It's because they blitz all the time.
Yeah, a lot of yak yards. And now listen, in their 3, they've played 4 games away from home. In the 3 non-division away games, the QBs they played were Kirk Cousins, who threw for 344 yards, Josh Allen, who threw for 324, and CJ Stroud, who threw for 470. So on the road, you can throw against this team. And because they are good against the run, 3.7 yards per carry, which is 4th best, I kind of feel like the Niners might attack them in the air. You could see a game where Kyle comes out, maybe that first series, he's throwing downfield a little bit. He's trying to get guys on the run against them. And it could be a big day for Brock Purdy. I was actually going to ask Cynthia, because I was watching, I forgot. I was watching her on Fantasy Football Live last night. I think I said on the show last time, I am sick of Trevor Lawrence's shit. And I was going to start Brock Purdy this week. But she said last night that Trevor Lawrence, she loves him this week. I forgot to ask her. Son of a bitch. I'm going to have to use my own judgment, which is horrible.
Yeah.
But so I kind of feel like Purdy's going to come out and he's going to throw the ball, and he could have a big game, especially at home. This could be a 250 plus yard, 2-3 touchdown day for Purdy.
Yeah, the Tampa Bay defense seems to be relatively similar to that Jacksonville defense that they just played, where Jacksonville, I think, was number 3 against the run. But they could be had through the air, and Brock Purdy threw for 296 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think we're going to see probably something pretty similar in terms of game plan from Kyle. Hopefully, again, you see Kittle involved. Like you said, if they give up a bunch of yak, I think you're going to see some shallow crossers with Debo and getting Kittle the ball in his hands. And, they'll obviously try and run the ball because that's what they do and that's what they believe in. But again, I'm not at all worried about this game, and I'm not at all worried about the defense against this Tampa Bay offense. It just doesn't. Baker doesn't scare me. Their running game doesn't scare me.
You have me worried now, though, with the trap game thing. Now I'm a little bit worried because I wasn't worried, and now maybe I'm worried. Because you're right. It's kind of like we had this big win. We're coming back home. We got Seattle 3 days, and then we got Philly, and then we got Seattle again, and you got Tampa Bay just kind of crunched in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's.
I'm hard pressed to think that there are trap games for this team in particular when they're healthy. That's the key. And they're healthy right now. There were no injuries coming out of that Jaguars game. The only injury of note is Nick Zakel, the backup guard and center, tore his bicep, and so he's out for the season. So I imagine they're going to elevate somebody from the practice squad. I would imagine it's going to be Corey Luciano, who is a center, because I think John Feliciano, as long as he plays like he did against the Jaguars, will probably end up slotting in for Spencer Burford when Aaron Banks comes back, to really upgrade the interior of the offensive line, because Feliciano was great against the Jaguars. I expect the same against Tampa Bay, although Vita Vea is quite a bit to deal with. So that'll be interesting to see. But yeah, so no injuries. This team is healthy. And again, I think they have their eye on the prize. I really do. I think that they are focused, that they are disciplined, and that they understand. And Kyle Shanahan, I think, probably drills this into them one game at a time. And I really do think that they live that motto. I don't think they're gonna get caught looking ahead. And I think even if they do, this team is so much more talented than Tampa Bay that even if they play a sloppy game, they still have the edge against Baker Mayfield and the Bucs.
One other stat I forgot to give about the defense for Tampa Bay: they've forced 16 turnovers this year, eight of which are fumbles. So they've forced 8 fumbles and recovered 8 fumbles, which is the second most in the NFL. So that's another read into how they gave up all these yards. Because again, I don't watch it. Who the hell wants to sit and watch Baker Mayfield? I don't watch a ton of the Bucs games.
No thanks.
But how maybe they gave up all these yards and only gave up so many 173 points. But I agree with you. Unless the Niners, it's a thing where it does become kind of a trap game, or there are a few turnovers sway things. Mike Evans hits a big pass, whatever, has a big catch downfield. Those type of things can keep the score close. But I think in this game, for me, I can't see it. The Niners have to lose this game to lose this game, if you know what I mean. They have to beat themselves. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to say Niners. I'm going to say the 30-point streak is starting again. Niners are going to win this game 30-17.
Awesome, because I was going to say the 49ers win this game 31-17. So
right in the same area. So yeah, perfect. I think it's going to be good. And the Niners, you get a nice little 2-game winning streak, and then you get into that quick game against Seattle on Thanksgiving, which I can't wait for. That's going to be so much fun Thanksgiving night to watch that.
Yes.
But we'll be back. We'll break down, obviously, the game this week, and then we'll preview the Seahawks game too. It's going to be a quick week with the Thursday game and Thanksgiving and everything like that. Oh, and for our friend at Starbucks, if you're listening to this, tweet at us. And we want to say thanks for telling Cynthia you listen to the show and you're a fan and everything like that. So if you're listening to the show and you're on Twitter, just be like, hey, guys, what's up on Twitter?
Yeah. Thank you for being a fan. There we go.
I appreciated that. Oh, Brian. Brian. All right, everybody. No, it's not Thanksgiving yet. I was going to say have a happy Thanksgiving. Just have a good weekend. Enjoy the game. And
enjoy the game. And then we'll be back next week.
Thanks, everybody.
Later.